Welcome to Every Story Time. Here today we are going to be reading a story. But first up, I actually have something new that we are going to be doing. And I'm going to do that after we do the intro, yes. But after the surprise, we are going to be doing the Bible. And then, right here, we are going to be reading The Hobbit. And we aren't just going to be reading The Hobbit. Hi, Jessica. Hi, Mom.
Jessica.
We are going to be finishing The Hobbit. And if you did not watch the one that we did earlier today, then I think you should watch that one.
It is already uploaded on YouTube, so if you want to watch it, then go for it.
It's already on YouTube. If you want to watch it, just go for it. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell and not miss another video. Oh, I almost forgot. In between the Bible and the Hobbit, we're going to be doing the weird synopsis. Hi, Becca. Oh, so many people. And then we are going to be doing the real synopsis. Okay, now it's time for my new thing that we are going to be doing. I'm going to be showing you where I think they are on the map. My dad helped me with this, kind of, so.
Okay, so
I know it's backwards and everything, but they're right here. We think that this is the Lonely Mountains because
there's
it's all
only one
alone.
of them.
It's legit all alone, and the rest of them are just all together.
And they went.
There's a lake next to it.
And there's a lake next to it, and they went through Markwood.
Yeah, that.
Here's the Iron Hills. That's where Diane came from. The Iron Hills.
They must be hills of steel.
That is the fastest way to the Lonely Mountains. Okay, so.
4 people.
What?
4 people on today.
It's because it says conclusion.
So, and here's my dad here, Heavy D, doing Bible reading time. I hope you enjoy.
So earlier today we read chapter 16 of the book of Luke, and we read about Lazarus and the rich man. And I promised you a video, which I have not uploaded yet, so I apologize. I will find that on YouTube and send a link, and you'll get to experience that for the next 3 days while we are not doing the live stream. And in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and read Luke chapter 17. And he said to his disciples, "Temptations to sin are sure to come, but woe to the one through whom they come. It would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck, and he were cast into the sea, than that he should cause one of these little ones to sin. Pay attention to yourselves. If your brother sins, rebuke him, and if he repents, forgive him. And if he sins against you 7 times in the day, and turns to you 7 times, saying, 'I repent,' you must forgive him." Let me just read that again. Kimmy, stop doing what you're doing. Daniel, stop doing what you're doing.
Hey, it was me.
I haven't gotten either one of their attentions yet. I'm not sure if they're actually paying attention.
I am.
All right, I'm going to start chapter 17 over again, and you're going to put your pencils down. You're going to look at me while I read this time. And he, that's Jesus, by the way, he said to his disciples, "Temptations to sin are sure to come, but woe to the one through whom they come. It would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck, and he were cast into the sea, than he should cause one of these little ones to sin. Pay attention to yourselves. If your brother sins, rebuke him, and if he repents, forgive him. And if he sins against you 7 times in the day and turns to you 7 times, saying, I repent, you must forgive him. The apostles said to the Lord, increase our faith. And the Lord said, if you had faith like a grain of mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it would obey you. Will any one of you who has a servant plowing or keeping sheep say to him when he has come in from the field, come at once and recline at the table? Will he not rather say to him, prepare supper for me and dress properly and serve me while I eat and drink, and afterward you will eat and drink? Does he thank the servant because he did what was commanded? So you also, when you have done all that you were commanded, say, we are unworthy servants. We have only done what was our duty. On the way to Jerusalem, he was passing along between Samaria and Galilee, and as he entered a village, he was met by 10 lepers who stood at a distance and lifted up their voices, saying, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. When he saw them, he said to them, go and show yourselves to the priest. And as they went, they were cleansed. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice, and he fell on his face at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. Now he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus answered, were not 10 cleansed? Where are the 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner? And he said to him, rise and go your way. Your faith has made you well. Being asked by the Pharisees when the kingdom of God would come, he answered them, the kingdom of God is not coming in ways that can be observed, nor will they say, look, here it is, or there, for behold, the kingdom of God is in the midst of you. And he said to the disciples, the days are coming when you will desire to see one of the days of the Son of Man, and you will not see it. And they will say to you, look there, or look here. Do not go out or follow them. For as the lightning flashes and lights up the sky from one side to the other, so will the Son of Man be in his day. But first he must suffer many things and be rejected by this generation. Just as it was in the days of Noah, so will it be in the days of the Son of Man. They were eating and drinking and marrying and being given in marriage until the day when Noah entered the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. Likewise, just as it was in the days of Lot, they were eating and drinking, buying and selling, planting and building. But on the day when Lot went out from Sodom, fire and sulfur rained from heaven and destroyed them all. So will it be on the day when the Son of Man is revealed. On that day let the one who is on the housetop with his goods in the house not come down to take them away, and likewise let the one who is in the field not turn back. Remember Lot's wife. Whoever seeks to preserve his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life will keep it. I tell you, in that night there will be 2 in one bed. One will be taken and the other left. There will be 2 women grinding together. One will be taken and the other left. And they said to him, where, Lord? He said to them, where the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. Wow. That's pretty heavy stuff. All right, so I'm going to transition now to the synopsis. Okay, so we read a couple of chapters, and so basically, Bard, of course, he had the Arkenstone because Bilbo gave it to him, and he walked up to the dwarves and he said, hey, yo, I've got the Arkenstone. You want it? Just give me 1/14 of the money. And Thorin said, oh, that's a steal. Of course I'll do that. And then, they were like dancing and stuff together. And then after that, I think that what basically happened was that there were some, what?
Sounds like socialism.
Sounds like socialism. All right, so This is not a political post, by the way. Okay, so basically what happened after that was, once the dwarves and the elves and the humans were all friends, then the goblins felt left out. So they showed up and said, "Hey, we heard you were having a party. We decided to bring some friends with us," and so the eagles showed up, and the eagles were just arriving to the party when we ended at the last strain. So Kimberly is here now, beating her head against a wall, just about, and she's gonna say how it really happened.
So, Dad was right for the first 2 sentences, if that. So what actually...
I just want it to be on record. Kimberly said Dad was right.
Yes.
Oh my god.
You said the words.
And so what actually happened was they went over and Bilbo, he gave Bard the Arkenstone, and he's like, you guys you need to figure out how to make peace and everything. And then Bilbo saw Gandalf over at their camp, and he's like, "Gandalf?" And then Gandalf's like, "Hey, there's some stuff that even the ravens don't know." And you said a few other things. I forget exactly what he said, but I'm trying to go fast. Then they go over, he goes over back, finishes the shift and everything, and then wakes up the guy at midnight. Bomber. I keep forgetting names, I'm sorry. But we only have 2 chapters left, so unless they make a return, then I won't have to remember the names. And then what happened is... Hey, Daniel, please don't do that. Then what happened is, the next day, Bard and a bunch of guys come over, and they're like, "Hey, we have the Arkenstone. Can you give us a 14th of the treasure?" And then,
Actually, that's not what they said.
kind of. It was kind of like that. A 12th?
Thorin asked how they had the Arkenstone, and Bilbo didn't even hide it. Bilbo told him.
I know, I was about to say that.
But that's why the 14th of the treasure came out, because he said, "Fine, I'll give you the Arkenstone, or I'll give you a 14th of the treasure in return for the Arkenstone, and that's Bilbo's share that I'm giving him."
Right.
Yeah.
And so then what happened is, Thorin told Bilbo, go over there because I don't like you anymore, because you were a traitor, and you gave him the Arkenstone, and also you hid it from me, which is reasonable. I mean, it is very reasonable. Then what happened was, the next day, or something like that, they go over and they see they're literally at the brink of war. They've literally got armies coming, and then on the horizon they see the goblins, the wolves, bats, and then the other wolf-like thing. I forget what they're called. I'm sorry.
Orcs.
Yes, that's what they were called. And then what happened was they teamed up in order, they were all very friendly with each other the second they realized that the goblins were
coming.
Yeah. So basically they're like, okay, so the goblins are my enemy, and the goblins are your enemy. So, okay, let's go beat them, and then we'll figure it out after this. So right now they're working together, and they were about to lose, and then the dwarves came. I think they came either during or before the battle. Either one. Probably before. Yeah, before. And then they were like literally seconds away from losing the battle, like for real. And then the eagles came, which, if you remember, when they were first rescued from the eagles about here in this area, you can't see my hand, but it's before they left. They went through Mirkwood.
It was after the
They were what saved them from the goblins
Yeah.
with the trees.
Mhm.
And so what happened is they basically were like, oh yeah, and the eagles, they're going to be at this battle, but that's the next time Bilbo sees them, so that's now. And
Oh, that's right. They did actually say, the narrator told us that the eagles were going to come back.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to hand it off to Dad.
So, we basically have, wow, there's still 4 people there. Hi, Jessica. Hi, Rebecca. Hi, Mom. And is Granny Bear the last one?
Should be.
Okay. Hi. I thank you so much for finishing the story with us. Oh, now there's 3. I really appreciate you being here and celebrating the end of The Hobbit with us. Well, it's not the end of The Hobbit, but it's the end of the book, The Hobbit. As you'll see, Bilbo does return for the next story.
Oh, and
so,
Bilbo got knocked out.
oh yeah, Bilbo got knocked out. Now, the eagles hadn't actually arrived at this point. The eagles were up in the air, and there's only one person that could see the eagles, and that was Bilbo. Because he has such sharp eyes, and I hope that I have such sharp eyes when I go to the range tomorrow. All right, so this is chapter, if I can read my Roman numerals, 18, The Return Journey. When Bilbo came to himself, he was literally by himself. He was lying on the flat stones of Raven Hill, and no one was near. A cloudless day, but cold, was broad above him. He was shaking and as chilled as stone, but his head burned with fire. Now I wonder what has happened, he said to himself. Excuse me. At any rate, I am not yet one of the fallen heroes, but I suppose there is still time enough for that. He sat up painfully. Looking into the valley, he could see no living goblins. After a while, as his head cleared a little, he thought he could see elves moving in the rocks below. He rubbed his eyes. Surely there was a camp still in the plain some distance off, and there was a coming and going about the gate. Dwarves seemed to be busy removing the wall, but all was deadly still. There was no call and no echo of a song. Sorrow seemed to be in the air. Victory after all, I suppose, he said, feeling his aching head. Well, it seems a very gloomy business. Suddenly he was aware of a man climbing up and coming towards him. "Hello there," he called with a shaky voice. "Hello there, what news?" "What news is that speaks among the stones?" said the man, halting and peering about him, not far from where Bilbo sat. Then Bilbo remembered his ring. "Well, I'm blessed," said he. "This invisibility has its drawbacks after all. Otherwise, I suppose I might have spent a warm and comfortable night in bed." "It's me, Bilbo Baggins, companion of Thorin," he cried, hurriedly taking off the ring. "It is well that I have found you," said the man, striding forward. "You are needed, and we have looked for you long. You would have been numbered among the dead, who are many, if Gandalf the wizard had not said that your voice was last heard in this place. I have been sent to look here for the last time. Are you much hurt?" "A nasty knock on the head, I think," said Bilbo, "but I have a helm and a hard skull. All the same, I feel sick, and my legs are like straws." "I will carry you down to the camp in the valley," said the man, and picked him lightly up. The man was swift and sure-footed. It was not long before Bilbo was set down before a tent in Dale, and there stood Gandalf with his arm in a sling. Even the wizard had not escaped without a wound, and there were few unharmed in all the host. When Gandalf saw Bilbo, he was delighted. "Baggins!" he exclaimed. "Well, I never! Alive after all! I am glad! I began to wonder if even your luck would see you through. A terrible business, and it nearly was disastrous. But other news can wait. Come, he said more gravely, you are called for. And leading the hobbit, he took him within the tent. Hail, Thorin, he said as he entered. I have brought him. There indeed lay Thorin Oakenshield, wounded with many wounds, and his rent armor and notched axe were cast upon the floor. He looked up as Bilbo came beside him. Farewell, good thief, he said. I go now to the halls of waiting to sit beside my fathers until the world is renewed. Since I leave now all gold and silver and go where it is of little worth, I wish to part in friendship from you, and I would take back my words and deeds at the gate. Bilbo knelt on one knee, filled with sorrow. Farewell, King under the mountain, he said. This is a bitter adventure, if it must end so, and not a mountain of gold can amend it. Yet I am glad that I have shared in your perils. That has been more than any Baggins deserves. No, said Thorin, there is more in you of good than you know, child of the kindly West. Some courage and some wisdom blended in measure. If more of us valued food and cheer and song above hoarded gold, it would be a merrier world. But sad or merry, I must leave it now. Farewell. Then Bilbo turned away, and he went by himself, and sat alone wrapped in a blanket, and, whether you believe it or not, he wept until his eyes were red and his voice was hoarse. He was a kindly little soul. Indeed, it was long before he had the heart to make a joke again. A mercy it is, he said at last to himself, that I woke up when I did. I wish Thorin were living, but I am glad that we parted in kindness. You are a fool, Bilbo Baggins, and you made a great mess of that business with the stone, and there was a battle, in spite of all your efforts to buy peace and quiet, but I suppose you can hardly be blamed for that. All that had happened after he was stunned, Bilbo learned later, but it gave him more sorrow than joy, and he was now weary of his adventure. He was aching in his bones for the homeward journey. That, however, was a little delayed, and in the meantime I will tell something of events. The eagles had long had suspicion of the goblins mustering. From their watchfulness the movements of the mountains could not be altogether hid. So they too had gathered in great numbers under the great eagle of the misty mountains, and at length, smelling battle from afar, they had come speeding down the gale in the nick of time. They it was who dislodged the goblins from the mountain slopes, casting them over precipices, or driving them down shrieking and bewildered among their foes. It was not long before they had freed the lonely mountain, and elves and men on either side of the valley could come at last to the help of the battle below. But even with the eagles they were still outnumbered. In the last hour Beorn himself had appeared. No one knew how or from where. He came alone and in bear's shape, and he seemed to have grown almost to giant size in his wrath. The roar of his voice was like drums and guns, and he tossed wolves and goblins from his path like straws and feathers. He fell upon their rear and broke like a clap of thunder through the ring. The dwarves were making a stand still about their lords upon a low rounded hill. Then Beorn stooped and lifted Thorin, who had fallen pierced with spears, and bore him out of the fray. Swiftly he returned, and his wrath was redoubled, so that nothing could withstand him, and no weapon seemed to bite upon him. He scattered the bodyguard and pulled down Bolg himself and crushed him. Then dismay fell on the goblins, and they fled in all directions. But weariness left their enemies with the coming of new hope, and they pursued them closely, and prevented most of them from escaping where they could. They drove many of them into the running river, and such as fled south or west they hunted into the marshes about the forest river, and there the greater part of the last fugitives perished, while those that came hardly to the wood elves' realm were there slain, or drawn in to die deep in the trackless dark of Mirkwood. Songs have said that 3 parts of the goblin warriors of the north perished on that day, and the mountain had peace for many a year. Victory had been assured before the fall of night, but the pursuit was still on foot when Bilbo returned to the camp, and not many were in the valley save the more grievously wounded. "Where are the eagles?" he asked Gandalf that evening, as he lay wrapped in many warm blankets. "Some are in the hunt," said the wizard, "but most have gone back to their eyries. They would not stay here, and departed with the first light in the morning. Dain was crowned their chief with gold, and sworn friendship with them forever." "I am sorry. I should have liked to see them again," said Bilbo sleepily. "Perhaps I shall see them on the way home. I suppose I shall be going home soon." "As soon as you like," said the wizard. Actually, it was some days before Bilbo really set out. They buried Thorin deep beneath the mountain, and Bard laid the Arkenstone upon his breast. "There let it lie till the mountain falls," he said. "May it bring good fortune to all his folk that dwell hereafter." Upon his tomb the Elven king then laid Orcrist, the elvish sword that had been taken from Thorin in captivity. It is said in songs that it gleamed ever in the dark if foes approached, and the fortress of the dwarves could not be taken by surprise. There now Dain, son of Nain, took up his abode, and he became king under the mountain, and in time many other dwarves gathered to his throne in the ancient halls. Of the 12 companions of Thorin, 10 remained. Fili and Kili had fallen defending him with shield and body, for he was their mother's elder brother. The others remained with Dain, for Dain dealt his treasure well. There was, of course, no longer any question of dividing the hoard in such shares as had been planned, to Balin and Dwalin and Dori and Nori and Ori and Owen and Glóin and Beaver and Bofer and Bomber, or to Bilbo. Yet a 14th share of all the silver and gold, wrought and unwrought, was given up to Bard. For Dain said, "We will honor the agreement of the dead," and he has now the Arkenstone in his keeping. Even a 14th share was wealth exceedingly great, greater than that of many mortal kings. From that treasure Bard sent much gold to the master of Lake Town, and he rewarded his followers and friends freely. To the Elven king he gave the emeralds of Girion, such jewels as he most loved, which Dain had restored to him. To Bilbo he said, "This treasure is as much yours as it is mine, though old agreements cannot stand, since so many have a claim in its winning and defense. Yet even though you were willing to lay aside all your claim, I should wish that the words of Thorin, of which he repented, should not prove true, that we should give you little. I would reward you most richly of all." "Very kind of you," said Bilbo, "but really, it is a relief to me. How on earth should I have got all that treasure home without war and murder all along the way? I don't know. And I don't know what I should have done with it when I got home. I am sure it is better in your hands." In the end, he would only take 2 small chests, one filled with silver and the other with gold, such as one strong pony could carry. "That will be quite as much as I can manage," said he. At last the time came for him to say good-bye to his friends. "Farewell, Balin," he said, "and farewell, Dwalin, and farewell, Dori, Nori, Ori, Owen, Glóin, Beaver, Bofer, and Bomber. May your beards never grow thin." And turning toward the mountain, he added, "Farewell, Thorin Oakenshield, and Fili and Kili. May your memory never fade." Then the dwarves bowed low before their gate, but words stuck in their throats. "Goodbye, and good luck wherever you fare," said Balin at last. "If ever you visit us again, when our halls are made fair once more, then the feast shall indeed be splendid." "If ever you are passing my way," said Bilbo, "don't wait to knock. Tea is at 4, but any of you are welcome at any time." Then he turned away. the elf host was on the march, and if it was sadly lessened, yet many were glad, for now the northern world would be merrier for many a day. The dragon was dead, and the goblins overthrown, and their hearts looked forward after winter to a spring of joy. Gandalf and Bilbo rode behind the elven king, and beside them strode Beorn, once again in man's shape, and he laughed and sang in a loud voice upon the road. So they went on until they drew near to the borders of Mirkwood, to the north of the place where the forest river ran out. Then they halted, for the wizard and Bilbo would not enter the wood, even though the king bade them stay a while in his halls. They intended to go along the edge of the forest and round its northern end in the waste that lay between it and the beginning of the Grey Mountains. It was a long and cheerless road, but now that the goblins were crushed, it seemed safer to them than the dreadful pathways under the trees. Moreover, Beorn was going that way too. "Farewell, O elven king," said Gandalf. "Merry be the greenwood, where the world is yet young, and merry be all your folk." "Farewell, O Gandalf," said the king. "May you ever appear where you are most needed and least expected. The oftener you appear in my halls, the better shall I be pleased." "I beg of you," said Bilbo, stammering and standing on one foot, "to accept this gift." And he brought out a necklace of silver and pearls that Dain had given him on their parting. "In what way have I earned such a gift, O Hobbit?" said the king. "Well, I thought—" "Don't you know," said Bilbo, rather confused, "that some little return should be made for your hospitality? I mean, even a burglar has his feelings. I have drunk much of your wine and eaten much of your bread." "I will take your gift, O Bilbo the Magnificent," said the king gravely, "and I name you elf friend and blessed. May your shadow never grow less, or stealing would be too easy. Farewell." Then the elves turned toward the forest, and Bilbo started on his long road home. He had many hardships and adventures before he got back. The wild was still the wild, and there were many other things in it in those days besides goblins. But he was well guided and well guarded. The wizard was with him and Beorn for much of the way, and he was never in great danger again. Anyway, by midwinter, Gandalf and Bilbo had come all the way back along both edges of the forest to the doors of Beorn's house, and there for a while they both stayed. Yuletide was warm and merry there, and men came from far and wide to feast at Beorn's bidding. The goblins of the Misty Mountains were now few and terrified, and hidden in the deepest holes they could find, and the wargs had vanished from the woods, so that men went abroad without fear. Beorn indeed became a great chief afterwards in those regions, and ruled a wide land between the mountains and the wood, and it is said that for many generations the men of his line had the power of taking bear's shape, and some were grim men and bad, but most were in heart like Beorn, if less in size and strength. In their day the last goblins were hunted from the Misty Mountains, and a new peace came over the edge of the wild. It was spring, and a fair one, with mild weathers and a bright sun, before Bilbo and Gandalf took their leave at last of Beorn, and though he longed for home, Bilbo left with regret, for the flowers of the gardens of Beorn were in springtime no less marvelous than in high summer. At last they came up the long road and reached the very pass where the goblins had captured them before. But they came to that high point at morning, and looking backwards, they saw a white sun shining over the outstretched lands. There behind lay Mirkwood, blue in the distance and darkly green at the nearer edge, even in the spring. There, far away, was the lonely mountain on the edge of eyesight. On its highest peak, snow yet unmelted was gleaming pale. "So comes snow after fire, and even dragons have their ending," said Bilbo, and he turned his back on his adventure. The Tookish part was getting very tired, and the Baggins was daily getting stronger. "I wish now only to be in my own armchair," he said. chapter 19, the last stage. Are we good? Okay. So, chapter 19, the last stage. So, I just have to make this slight commentary. I think a normal author would have ended at chapter 18, but Tolkien is not a normal author, so he decided to write us another chapter. You will see that theme present in the Lord of the Rings also, in which there's an additional book that almost seems irrelevant at the end of the story. But, anyway, all right, well, that's future commentary for a future time, but I think that that is part of Tolkien's style. So, chapter 19, the last stage. It was on May the 1st when the two came back at last to the brink of the valley of Rivendell, where stood the last, or the first, homely house. Again it was evening. Their ponies were tired, especially the one that carried the baggage, and they all felt in need of rest. As they rode down the steep path, Bilbo heard the elves still singing in the trees, as if they had not stopped since he left, and as soon as the riders came down into the lower glades of the wood, they burst into a song of much the same kind as before. This is something like it. The dragon is withered, his bones are now crumbled, his armor is shivered, his splendor is humbled. Though sword shall be rusted, and thrones and crown perish, with strength that men trusted, and wealth that they cherish. Here grass is still growing, and leaves are yet swinging, the white water flowing, and elves are yet singing. Come, tra-la-la-la-lolly, come back to the valley. The stars are far brighter than gems without measure. The moon is far whiter than silver in treasure. The fire is more shining on hearth in the gloaming than gold won by mining. So why go a-roaming? Oh, tra-la-la-la-la-lally, come back to the valley. Oh, where are you going so late in returning? The river is flowing, the stars are all burning. Oh, whiter so laden, so sad and so dreary. Here elf and elf maiden, so now welcome the weary. With tra-la-la-la-lally, come back to the valley. Tra-la-la-lally, fa-la-la-lally, fa-la. Then the elves of the valley came out and greeted them, and led them across the water to the house of Elrond. There a warm welcome was made them, and there were many eager ears that evening to hear many eager ears that evening to hear the tale of their adventures. Gandalf it was who spoke, for Bilbo was fallen quite quiet and drowsy. Most of the tale he knew, for he had been in it, and had himself told much of it to the wizard on their homeward way, or in the house of Beorn. But every now and again he would open one eye and listen when a part of the story which he did not yet know, came in. It was in this way that he learned where Gandalf had been to, for he overheard the words of the wizard to Elrond. It appeared that Gandalf had been to a great council of the White Wizards, masters of lore and good magic, and that they had at last driven the necromancer from his dark hold in the south of Mirkwood. Ere long now, Gandalf was saying, the forest will grow somewhat more wholesome. The north will be freed from that horror for many long years, I hope. Yet I wish he were banished from the world. It would be well indeed, said Elrond, but I fear that will not come about in this age of the world, or for many after. When the tale of their journeyings was told, there were other tales, and yet more tales, tales of long ago, and tales of new things, and tales of no time at all, till Bilbo's head fell forward on his chest, and he snored comfortably in a corner. He woke to find himself in a white bed, and the moon shining through an open window. Below it, many elves were singing loud and clear on the banks of the stream. Sing all ye joyful, now sing all together, the winds in the treetop, the winds in the heather. The stars are in blossom, the moon is in flower, and bright are the windows of night in her tower. Dance all ye joyful, now dance all together, soft as the grass, and let foot be like feather. The river is silver, the shadows are fleeting, merry is Maytime, and merry our meeting. Sing we now softly, and dreams let us weave him, wind him in slumber, and there let us leave him. The wanderer sleepeth, now soft be his pillow, lullaby, lullaby, alder and willow. Sigh no more pine, till the wind of the morn, fall moon, dark be the land. Hush, hush, oak, ash, and thorn. Hushed be all water, till dawn is at hand. Well, merry people, said Bilbo, looking out, what time by the moon is this? Your lullaby would waken a drunken goblin, yet I thank you. And your snores would waken a stone dragon, yet we thank you, they answered with laughter. It is drawing towards dawn, and you have slept now since the night's beginning. Tomorrow, perhaps, you will be cured of weariness. A little sleep does a great cure in the house of Elrond, said he, but I will take all the cure I can get. A second good night's fair friends. And with that he went back to bed and slept till late morning. Weariness fell from him soon in that house, and he had many a merry jest and dance, early and late, with the elves of the valley. Yet even that place could not long delay him now, and he thought always of his own home. After a week, therefore, he said farewell to Elrond, and giving him such small gifts as he would accept, he rode away with Gandalf. Even as they left the valley, the sky darkened in the west before them, and the wind and rain came up to meet them. Merry is Maytime, said Bilbo, as the rain beat into his face, but our back is to legends, and we are coming home. I suppose this is the first taste of it. There is a long road yet, said Gandalf. But it is the last road, said Bilbo. They came to the river that marked the very edge of the borderland of the wild, and to the ford beneath the steep bank, which you may remember. The water was swollen both with the melting of the snows and the approach of summer, and with the day-long rain, but they crossed with some difficulty and pressed forward as evening fell on the last stage of their journey. This was much as it had been before, except that the company was smaller and more silent. Also this time there were no trolls. At each point on the road Bilbo recalled the happenings and the words of a year ago. It seemed to him more like 10, so that of course he quickly noted the place where the pony had fallen in the river, and they had turned aside for their nasty adventure with Tom and Bert and Bill. Not far from the road they found the gold of the trolls, which they had buried, still hidden and untouched. I have enough to last me my time, said Bilbo, when they had dug it up. You had better take this, Gandalf. I dare say you can find a use for it. Indeed I can, said Gandalf, but share and share alike. You may find you have more needs than you expect. So they put the gold in bags and slung them on the ponies, who were not at all pleased about it. After that their going was slower, for most of the time they walked, but the land was green, and there was much grass through which the Hobbit strolled along contentedly. He mopped his face with a red silk handkerchief. No, not a single one of his own had survived. He had borrowed this one from Elrond, for now June had brought summer, and the weather was bright and hot again. As all things come to an end, even this story, a day came at last when they were in sight of the country where Bilbo had been born and bred, where the shapes of the land and of the trees were as well known to him as his hands and toes. Coming to a rise, he could see his own hill in the distance, and he stopped suddenly and said, "Roads go ever, ever on, over rock and under tree, by caves where never sun has shone, by streams that never finds the sea, over snow by winter sown, and through the merry flowers of June, over grass and over stone, and under mountains in the moon. Roads go ever, ever on, under cloud and under star, yet feet that wandering have gone, turn at last to home afar. Eyes that fire and sword have seen, and horror in the halls of stone, look at last on meadows green, and trees and hills they long have known." Gandalf looked at him. "My dear Bilbo," he said, "something is the matter with you. You are not the hobbit that you were." And so they crossed the bridge and passed the mill by the river and came right back to Bilbo's own door. "Bless me, what's going on?" he cried. There was a great commotion, and people of all sorts, respectable and unrespectable, were thick round the door, and many were going in and out, not even wiping their feet on the mat, as Bilbo noticed with annoyance. If he was surprised, they were more surprised still. He had arrived back in the middle of an auction. There was a large notice in black and red hung on the gate, stating that on June the 22nd, Messrs. Grubb and Burrows would sell by auction the effects of the late Bilbo Baggins, Esquire of Bag End, Underhill, Hobbiton, sale to commence at 10 o'clock sharp. It was now nearly lunchtime, and most of the things had already been sold for various prices, from next to nothing to old songs, as is not unusual at auctions. Bilbo's cousins, the Sackville Bagginses, were, in fact, busy measuring his rooms to see if their own furniture would fit. In short, Bilbo was, quote, presumed dead, and not everybody, they said, that said so was sorry to find the presumption wrong. The return of Mr. Bilbo Baggins created quite a disturbance, both under the hill and over the hill and across the water. It was a great deal more than a 9 days' wonder. The legal bother, indeed, lasted for years. It was quite a long time before Mr. Baggins was, in fact, admitted to be alive again. The people who had got specially good bargains at the sale took a deal of convincing, and in the end, to save time, Bilbo had to buy back quite a lot of his own furniture. Many of his silver spoons mysteriously disappeared and were never accounted for. Personally, he suspected the Sackville Bagginses. On their side, they never admitted that the returned Baggins was genuine, and they were not on friendly terms with Bilbo ever after. They really had wanted to live in this nice hobbit hole so very much. Indeed, Bilbo found he had lost more than spoons. He had lost his reputation. It is true that forever after he remained an elf friend, and had the honour of dwarves, wizards, and all such folk as ever passed that way, but he was no longer quite respectable. He was, in fact, held by all the hobbits of the neighbourhood to be queer, except by his nephews and nieces on the Took side, but even they were not encouraged in their friendship by their elders. I am sorry to say he did not mind. He was quite content, and the sound of the kettle on his hearth was ever after more musical than it had been even in the quiet days before the unexpected party. His sword he hung over the mantelpiece. His coat of mail was arranged on a stand in the hall until he lent it to a museum. His gold and silver was largely spent in presents, both useful and extravagant, which to a certain extent accounts for the affection of his nephews and his nieces. His magic ring he kept a great secret, for he chiefly used it when unpleasant callers came. He took to writing poetry and visiting the elves, and though many shook their heads and touched their foreheads and said, "Poor old Baggins," and though few believed any of his tales, he remained very happy to the end of his days, and those were extraordinarily long. One autumn evening, some years afterwards, Bilbo was sitting in his study writing his memoir. He thought of calling them There and Back Again, A Hobbit's Holiday, when there was a ring at the door. It was Gandalf and a dwarf, and the dwarf was actually Balin. Come in," said Bilbo, and soon they were settled in chairs by the fire. If Balin noticed that Mr. Baggins' waistcoat was more extensive and had real gold buttons, Bilbo also noticed that Balin's beard was several inches longer, and his jeweled belt was, of course, of great magnificence. They fell to talking of their times together, of course, and Bilbo asked how things were going in the land of the mountain. It seemed they were going very well. Bard had rebuilt the town of Dale, and men had gathered to him from the lake and from the south and west, and all the valley had become tilled again and rich, and the desolation was now filled with birds and blossoms in spring, and fruit and feasting in autumn. And Lake Town was refounded, and was more prosperous than ever, and much wealth went up and down the running river, and there was friendship in those parts between elves and dwarves and men. The old master had come to a bad end. Bard had given him much gold for the help of the lake people, but being of the kind that easily catches such disease, he fell under the dragon's sickness, and took most of the gold, and fled with it, and died of starvation in the waste, deserted by his companions. The new master is of wiser kind, said Balin, and very popular, for, of course, he gets most of the credit for the present prosperity. They are making songs which say that in his day the rivers run with gold. Then the prophecies of the old songs have turned out to be true after a fashion, said Bilbo. Of course, said Gandalf, and why should not they prove true? Surely you don't disbelieve the prophecies because you had a hand in bringing them about yourself. You don't really suppose, do you, that all your adventures and escapes were managed by mere luck, just for your sole benefit? You are a very fine person, Mr. Baggins, and I am very fond of you, but you are only quite a little fellow in a wide world after all. Thank goodness, said Bilbo, laughing, and handed him the tobacco jar. That is the end of The Hobbit, but not the end of The Hobbit. So there's a final picture by J.R.R. Tolkien that is included in this volume, this beautiful volume that I got for my birthday present. My birthday present.
I would like to show this because
Okay.
I finished it and I've been doing this.
Okay, so now we have the art gallery, and I'm going to have to move the camera in order to see it appropriately. So just 1 second, bear with us. Okay, we will move it back here, and you can...
Carrie did it. So no. Turn around. Turn around. No, here.
Are you...
It's actually sideways. Oh, I'm going over there. Okay. It's not big enough. Okay, so I've been working on this for like 3 or 4 books. Daniel's holding the other end of it. This is really kind of inaccurate, but it's almost twin size. It's a little bit, not quite as long as twin size, but it's
really
definitely
big.
as wide. So,
It's heavy.
but it's finished.
It's heavy.
Yay!
It is heavy. It is heavy. It is heavy.
And
Oh yeah, I
did this.
200 pounds today.
I
Don't show
literally
Daniel.
took half.
Is that upside down?
It's upside down.
Daniel, it took half of the live stream to do the hair. Just the hair.
All right. So we will return on hopefully Thursday. And
In between that now and then, are we going to watch The Hobbit?
maybe if we have time. And then after, well, I was going to pull one book out, but oh my gosh, this is heavy. Then we're going to read Lord of the Rings. So I hope you're up for it. If you're not, then too bad. Great job, kids. This is some cool drawings. Oh, wow, that is fantastic. Looks cozy. Wow, that's huge.
It is huge.
Can I scroll down? Hi. Okay, that's all the comments that we got. Okay, so we will see you guys again on Thursday. God bless you, and see you later. Bye.
Goodbye.